Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Papagei English, and this is IELTS Reading course. This is our first session, and in this session I'm going to give you a brief description about the course and an introduction to the IELTS Reading Test. Now, before starting the course, I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube and leave your comments. All of them will help me to improve quality of my work. Now, let's just start the course. In this slide, I'm going to share with you some important tips. The first one is about my philosophy of learning. A day or two is not enough to master a skill, not even a month. A year is insufficient. Besides from desire to learn, you must have superior willpower. Learning is superior. Everything else is inferior. I just want to highlight the importance of education and having a positive viewpoint on learning. And the second one is, don't think of learning a new language as a compulsory subject, but rather as an opportunity. And indeed, it really is. It will open up lots of doors for you in the future, and it will bring a lucrative career for you in the future. Needless to say, English is the language of the world, and without a good English, you won't be able to communicate with the rest of the world. Now, welcome to the reading section of the IELTS exam. In this slide, I'm going to share with you some important tips. Tip number 1. For whom this course is suitable, a general English of at least intermediate level. Please be careful that in this course, we're not going to focus on teaching you the new vocabulary, grammar, and structures. And we're going to focus on different strategies for approaching different type of the questions in IELTS reading test. How to handle questions in IELTS reading test. Tip number 2. Be realistic and don't be deceived by dishonest people. I know there are lots of people who claim that they will teach you some tricks and techniques that will enable you to get a band 8 or higher scores in IELTS exam in just 2 months or 3 months. If you are this kind of person, just pause the video and don't waste your time here. But if you're looking for some authentic English and you are a motivated and a determined person, you are in the right place. And I promise you, I will do my best in order to pave the way for your success in IELTS exam. And as you see, your score in the reading section is about 80% up to general English and 20% to strategies. And at the end of the day, this is the exam that's been designed to test your knowledge of vocabulary and grammar and overall your knowledge of English. It's not designed to test your tricks, strategies, and your way of answering the questions. And tip number 3, the key to success in IELTS reading test. Persistency, patience, hard work. Now let me make it clear for you the term persistency. I've been studying German on an app called Duolingo for more than 481 days. This is my streak. My streak is 482 or 3 days as far as I remember. But since I started learning German, I haven't quit this habit even a single day. So I'm a persistent person. When it comes to language learning, you should be persistent. You should be like me. And patience. Of course, patience is important. We're not talking about a matter of overnight success. Language learning requires time and commitment. And of course, hard work is an integral part of any success in your life that you can have. Now, let's go to the next slide. In this slide, I'm going to talk about different sources for preparation for IELTS reading test. If you feel that you're not good at vocabulary, I recommend you to review the Oxford Word Skills books, the intermediate and advanced level. They will help you to boost your vocabulary. If you're looking for some academic English, I recommend you to buy Inside Reading books. You can buy these books from the bookstores in your country. These books are a good source of rich English because the audio file of the text is attached to the books, and you can improve your reading and at the same time improve your pronunciation, speaking, and listening skills. And also there are some video clips attached to these books which are very useful, and you are more likely to see in exams just like as IELTS or TOEFL audio files and contents like this. Follow English-speaking countries' official representatives on social platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. For example, around a year ago, I followed Boris Johnson on Instagram, and when Russia attacked Ukraine, I learned a lot of phrases about political conflicts and war. If you follow some environmental activists, you are more likely to learn lots of terms related to the environmental protection. And the next one, follow BBC News, CBC News, and VOA News, and which news platforms you prefer. And try to listen to news in English on a daily basis. You should even turn the language of your cell phone into English if it isn't. You should increase your exposure to the environment in which English is a spoken language. And also read and search in journals like as Nature, Springer, and elsewhere, and read around a variety of different topics. For example, space explorations, searching in the environment, nature, chemistry, physics, biology, history, and try to cover a different range of topics. Let's go to the next slide. In this slide, I'm gonna talk about the IELTS reading section. The reading test consists of 3 sections with 40 questions. There are 3 texts which are taken from journals, books, magazines, and newspapers. The texts are on the topic of general interest. At least one text contains detailed logical argument. Tip number 1. The first section is the easiest section, and as you proceed through the test, it becomes harder and harder. 95% of the cases. This is the scenario you're going to face in your IELTS reading test. Okay, but if you face a case in which the passage one is slightly difficult and more challenging, please don't worry and don't panic. IELTS is a standard test, and in this case, the passage 2 and 3 would be slightly easier in order to make it up for you. Tip number 2. The reading test lasts for an hour and you have 20 minutes for each section to answer the questions. Tip number 3. Be careful that you don't have extra time to transfer your answers to the answer sheet, and you have to do this during the test. That's also an important point to keep in your mind, and while you're practicing at home, try to stick to the time limits and also write your answers in an answer sheet. Tip number 4. The difficulty level of the text is not the same, and therefore you would need around 12 to 14 minutes for passage 1 and 16 to 18 minutes for passage 2 and around 25 minutes for passage 3. And again, this isn't an absolute truth, and these time fractions could be different from test to test. But in general, and in 90% of the cases, this is the scenario you're going to face in your exam. And if you face a scenario in which the test is a little bit different, don't worry, this is a standard exam, and if your, for example, passage 1 is a little bit more challenging, the other 2 passages is gonna make it up for you. Now let's go on to the next slide. In this slide, I'm gonna talk about different types of questions in IELTS reading test. I separated them into 2 categories, more common questions and less common questions. We're going to give you a complete explanations about each type of these questions in our next lessons. But heading questions, true, false, not given, matching features, gap fill questions, multiple choice, these are common questions, and some questions are less common. They appear less in the IELTS test, just like as short answer questions, choosing a title, or classification and diagram labeling questions. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all of this, and we're going to give you complete explanations about each type of questions. In this slide, I'm going to talk about scoring. Please be careful that the scoring is different for academic and general version of the IELTS test. You can download these tables from the IELTS official website and calculate your score while you're practicing at home. But important point is that if you score between 6.5 and 8, at home, then you are more likely to get an acceptable score under examinations conditions. Let's go to the next slide. In this slide, I'm going to talk about 3 strategies. These are just the series. I will explain you these 3 strategies in a very clear way in the next slide. Now let's just read the 3 of the what is these 3 strategies in the IELTS reading. Scanning. You will need to use different scanning skills in the reading test. Sometimes you will be looking for a name, number, or a title. This is the least difficult task to do successfully, as you will be able to use capital letters, numbers, and italicized words. Skimming. You are more likely to use skimming than the other 2 strategies. Skimming is more important than the other 2. Skimming can help you to form a mental map of the text, which will help you to identify the correct areas to look for answers in and also find the keywords for answering questions. And finally, intensive reading, to read carefully in order to comprehend the text. Okay, in this slide, I'm gonna give you a simple example in order to completely make it clear for you what the scanning, skimming, and intensive reading are. Okay, and now just pause the video and think about WHO. It's not WHO, it's WHO. It's an abbreviation. Think about which strategies we should use in order to find the WHO in these 2 paragraphs. Now, let me turn on my highlighter in order to show that. If you're ready, now let's resume the video and find it. It's easy to find. Okay, this is the first one, this is the second one, and also this is WHO. You can find it just by looking at the paragraphs, because it's not easy, and I just scanned the passage. So this is scanning. Okay, now let's go on to the second one. Pause the video and in the second paragraph look for disease. It's a little bit difficult and tricky, and you need to paraphrase, find the paraphrase of the diseases. But you need to do these kinds of exercises in order to comprehend the reading skills and be more familiar with the IELTS reading test. Pause the video and think for a few seconds, and then we're gonna do it together. Okay, let me turn on my laser point in order to show the speed in which I'm reading just by my eyes. Don't read by lips, and just read by your eyes, okay? Okay, I find it in diabetes or asthma. But I'm going to turn on my highlighter and explain something for you. I find asthma and diabetes, but there are other close words to disease that you can be careful about them. For example, pharmaceutical industry. This is a little bit close to the disease, or antibiotic development. And the other one, antibiotics. You need to be careful. Drugs, for example, as the drugs, you need to be careful. Or a laboratory, you need to be careful about the words which are close to the disease. Okay, now let me turn off my highlighter and do the third exercise. Just pause the video and look for a price, look for a number. You need to use the scan the passage, okay? If you're ready, you can resume the video, and I'm gonna find it. Okay, this is 114 countries, and also I find the price. That was easy because scanning is easy. We look for names of the people, we look for abbreviations, we look for prices, we look for numbers and specific years, okay? But skimming requires a good paraphrasing skills, and you need to be a little bit more careful about that, okay? And now let me turn off my highlighter and go to the next slide. In this slide, we're gonna do another exercise. Just pause the video and look for a country. Which skill do you think you need to use in order to find a name of a country? And of course, it is scanning. Let me turn on my highlighter and find the name of a country. Okay, China. I'll find China in the second sentences. Okay. And then you can again search the passage in order to find the other places in which the China has been mentioned. Okay, now let's just this is another China. I'm just looking by my eyes. Okay, if you do this exercise for some time, you will master it. It's not difficult. And this is just example. I will give you complete explanations in the real test. I just want to make you familiar with these skimming, scanning, and intensive reading skills. If you do not manage to find the relevant part of the text by scanning and skimming, you, as a last resort, you have to use the intensive reading and read the paragraph carefully in order to answer the questions. Now, just look for a word that is similar to generation. Okay, it's a tricky one, but I just have this word. Just look at the first paragraph in order to show you that you need to be search for different things, and you need to be good at paraphrasing. Okay, find something that is close in meaning to generation, a period, okay, a period of something. And scheme it. You need to use the scheming techniques, okay? Pause the video and think about it, and then we'll do it together. Okay, several millennia. I find this. While it is unknown just how much of this is true, it is certainly known that silk cultivation has existed in China for several millennia. It's something similar to the generation or a period of something. Okay, now let's go on for the third one. Just look for a name. You need to scan. We scan for finding names. Okay, now I'm going to highlight the names. I find names. Names are easy to find because they're spelled in capital letters. Okay, for example, Han Dynasty. It's not a name of King Dynasty, but it's spelled in capital letters, so it's not difficult to find. Okay, and now that's enough. Let's go on to the next one. Look for numbers. Numbers are easy to find. 168 AD and 3000 BC, and also we have numbers here. Okay, you can find numbers in different, and the numbers are the most easiest ones to find. Okay, look for a tone. This is a word, and you can exactly find the word in the second paragraph. Just look for it. Do this exercise, skim the paragraph in order to find the tone. Okay, now this is tone. I find it here as well. Now, these were some simple and interactive exercises between you and me in order to understand what the skimming, scanning, and intensive readings are, and when should we use each of these strategies. In the next sessions, I will give you complete explanations about each type of questions and how to approach them and which strategies to use. So if you feel that it's a little bit confusing, don't worry. We're gonna discuss it in with more details and explanations in the next sessions. That is the end of session 1. I hope it would be useful for you. I would appreciate if you subscribe again to my channel and leave your comments. If you liked video, like our videos and support our course in YouTube. Thank you very much.